Good morning.
Morning. Hi, Adam. I
How
can
are
see
you? Okay.
nothing else at the moment.
No problem at all.
You're on bright and early, so that's cool. Oh,
I
okay.
thought I'd come in and get my background set up. I've got a
Absolutely. Yeah.
is that it? There I am. There I am.
Perfect. You have a presentation that you're going to want to put up.
It's a verbal one, if that's all right, rather
Yeah,
than lots of flashy pictures, etc. Not that we don't
Yeah.
have those, but I often find that people kind of get lost in what I'm saying if we've got lots of pictures and things floating up. So
No problem. What I will do is I'll put our agenda up, and then I'll take it off when you start speaking.
cool. I'm just going to run through, just so you're aware in advance, I'm just going to run through our bank's history,
Okay.
what sustainability banking is, what we see that in terms of the nursery sector, what an attractive proposal looks to a bank like us from the nursery sector,
Yeah.
some case studies, and then just a Q&A.
That's great. I bank with you, by the way, personally.
Oh, do you? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Lovely
I
to
don't
hear.
as a company, because it was very expensive. But,
So we've got a bit of a complication with bank accounts for the companies at the moment, in that we're very selective, as you know, we're not just a mass market bank.
yeah.
So every loan that we make has to have that beneficial impact. And
Okay, hold yourself there, because I'll ask that question when everybody's on
great.
the call, so we can investigate that one further. I'm not expecting a big meeting. We've had quite a few apologies. There's been a huge staff shortage in early years currently that we're all really struggling with, and unfortunately the government didn't help with their budget that they just announced. Not at all. They've stimulated demand without helping us with supply, so it's going to be quite a challenge. So yeah, I know we've had a lot of, so we've had quite a few apologies. We've got 5 on the call already there, so hopefully a few more will come on in the next 3 minutes or so. Can you see that share, by the way, for the agenda or not?
I can, yes.
Okay, perfect. What we tend to do, well, I'll talk through it at 12 o'clock. I put just a few questions up, just in case you're not covering them.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
So while we're waiting, there are some people on the call. Alfreton Nursery School, Kyla. The Barney's on from Johannesburg. He's been supporting these meetings for me, because Gecko and this is run as a charity, basically, on the side. Currently there's no charge for being a member of Gecko or attending these meetings or hearing our best practice, and we've had all kinds of interesting people on. But we do also record it, so that the people that miss the meeting can come on later and hear. Just to warn you. Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people, could end up in numbers being in the early years sector, and then they can't be listening on calls. Yeah, it's very difficult because we've got statutory numbers. If you've got a couple of members off staff sick, and then you can't not cover them. You then have to send children away. So it means that sometimes nursery managers and owners have to just go in and be on the floor. So we get a lot of. It's difficult this time of day as well, because you've got lunch cover. But so yeah, so we record it. Other than that, we'll start it bang on 12 o'clock anyway, and then share it from there. Hey, Kyla's on. Kyla, where are you from? Just remind me.
From Watermead Day Nursery in Loughborough.
Loughborough. Oh, I'm going to come up to Loughborough at Easter time.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, my brother's son's playing hockey.
Oh, lovely.
In Scotland.
I am here, but I may need to pop off. I just heard you speaking about apologies. I was going to send my apologies, but I wanted to attend and see how I got on. But I might need to go and do lunch cover.
Yeah, know the score. Thank you. Nice to see you, Kyla.
And you,
I've got
thank you.
Amanda on from Alfreton Nursery School as well. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hi there. So you've got people that are already sustainable in their practice on the call so far. All three of us are very much trying to do our best for sustainability.
I'll be
We're
preaching to the
people.
converted then.
Yeah. Well, although we're converted, it's not that necessarily that easy to use sustainable banking or to actually know about banking either. Oh, Diane's coming on as well. Hi, Diane. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Yeah. So Diane's in the academic world. So this is a potential for spreading about sustainable banking as well, because she normally delivers to people and writes about it at doctorate level. So so we've got 3 sustainable nurseries on so far, Diane, and more people may come on. I was just explaining we're recording it so that people that have to miss because they've got to cover lunch break and stuff can then listen in on later.
I think I've seen Amanda's from Alfreton Nursery before. She did that. She was part of another sustainability forum session where she showed some lovely work that was happening at the nursery.
Absolutely, yeah, it's been some lovely stuff. Okay, right, well, it's 12 o'clock, so without further ado, we'll crack on with the meeting. We don't tend to go through minutes. If anything's happened, then it goes out by email before, so we don't need to worry anybody with that. If anyone wants to see the previous meetings, there's the link to go onto the Gecko website. I just need to turn my phone off. And so I'm going to introduce Adam Stanley from Triodos Bank, who I think has the reputation of being one of the most sustainable banks in the UK. And I'm hoping he's going to tell us all about sustainable banking. There's 10 people that have apologized, so we're not going to put their names up just now. Barney's just said. Okay, so all over to you, Adam, to tell us about sustainable banking.
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. Lovely to meet you all. First of all, as mentioned, I'm Adam Stanley. I'm one of the relationship managers for Triodos Bank's business banking department in London, the South East region. I'm going to talk you through a couple of sections. We'll start off with the bank's history, what sustainability is in banking, how it can be applied in the nursery sector, what makes an attractive financing proposal for a bank like us from the nursery sector, a couple of case studies, and then a quick Q&A. So diving into us, we were founded in 1980 on the belief that capital can be used as a force for positive change in the world and not just financial returns. So our mission is to finance businesses and organizations that are having a positive impact on people, society, culture, and an absolute fundamental, which is the environment. In addition to our typical business banking arm, we also have a corporate finance team whose job effectively is to structure and issue equity or bond instruments for profitable organizations, but typically ones that don't have cash flow profiles that would be suitable for servicing a traditional bank loan. And they have worked quite a lot in the early years sector as well. Some of the areas that we've pioneered over the course of our history have been wind and solar energy schemes. And today we're active in the Netherlands, which is our home region, Belgium, Germany, Spain, and of course the UK. So what is sustainability in banking? This is a growing topic and something that we get questioned on a lot about when we're at networking events or just out and about with meeting potential new customers. So sustainable banking itself refers to practices and products that are effectively promoting and financing not just environmental but also social sustainability. Triodos Bank and other institutions are currently heavily engaged in what we call engineering our balance sheets into positions of net zero or ideally a negative zero carbon output, in addition to embracing more sustainable practices within our own direct operations. So in plain English, that effectively means that we ourselves, day-to-day in our operations, are embracing more sustainable ways of working, such as going paperless, lots of more digital processes that traditionally have always required wet signatures, for example, and in security documentation too, and also looking to actually finance businesses themselves are becoming more sustainable. So a bank's loan is called on its balance sheet is a lending asset, and the lending assets themselves, this is kind of tied to the bank's own sustainability, is that loan is as sustainable as the business or organization that it's been lent to. So accordingly, in the way that we manage that is that all of our customers, new and existing, now have to provide us with satisfactory and tangible net zero plans. As a bank ourselves, we've set ourselves, which is quite an ambitious target, to reach net zero of 2035. So we're kind of hard at work at that. Moving into then how sustainability can be applied with the nursery sector. Well, probably the first and foremost areas to look at is the actual sustainability of the buildings themselves. So nurseries can make their properties more environmentally friendly, and this can be achieved through the increasing use of sustainable insulation. So actually increasing those energy performance certificate ratings, that's kind of a key starting point. Using more sustainable building materials, using more efficient electrical appliances, embracing and starting to work with alternative energy sources such as ground source heat pumps, solar energy, or in fact actually fitting out solar panels on your premises, and using green energy as opposed to more traditional gas and coal-fired energy, and looking to increase the use of efficient water conservation methods. You can distill another level down to that, and that's actually encouraging more environmentally friendly transport systems. So nurseries themselves can look to, this is something that we've actually seen across a lot of businesses, which is very interesting. Nurseries can look to install car charging ports to encourage not just staff, but also parents to actually make the switch over to electric vehicles. Seeing car charge ports when you go somewhere has a subtle subconscious impact on you, because it's almost the availability of the resource there to charge your car if you needed to. Other things that we've seen nurseries do is actually start to invest in company electric vehicles. We've also seen initiatives whereby nurseries have been supporting the logistics and the organising of parent car pools and shares to effectively reduce the parents' emissions. And also, indeed, this is another step, actually investing in electric buses, so that the nursery then, I appreciate that's quite a shift in the operations of some nurseries, but actually giving the ability to take that transport in-house through a green way of doing it is very effective. Something else we really like to see, and this is quite a key feature for us as a bank, is actually building the syllabus and culture within the nursery around sustainability and social responsibility. This takes many forms, but some common themes that we often see are fostering a passion for the environment, recycling, lessons around social responsibility, using green products, providing organic meals, using eco-friendly cleaning products and supplies, having what we call nature-based education, so lots of lessons that are outside, in woodlands or just in wherever there's green assets, and also providing access to affordable childcare for low-income families. There's another element as well. We as a bank ourselves use this. It's a good kind of bridge between where the practicalities are kind of limited to how much you can increase sustainability currently with the technology playing slight catch up, and where we want to be, which is actually carbon offsetting. So in a nutshell, nurseries could employ carbon consultants or energy performance consultants to come in, make a carbon assessment of your operations, and they'll be able to provide you a really tangible breakdown of what your carbon score is, where the areas you can work on, and solutions that you can look to implement to increase your sustainability. Once you have an understanding of what your carbon output is, you can then look to purchase things called carbon credits from natural capital projects. What carbon credits are effectively, these are credits provided by projects that have natural capital resources that can sequester carbon. So for example, forestry projects, peat bogs, typically these areas of high biodiversity with the natural assets in place to sequester carbon. So if you have a carbon deficit, you could look to offset that by purchasing these carbon credits, which finance and grow these natural capital projects to sequester more carbon. So you kind of balance yourself off. We as a bank use that, and it's an area that we're actually looking to support further growing into the future. So moving into actually what makes an attractive, Traders Bank is very different, as mentioned previously. We don't we're not a mass market bank. We're not looking to grow our market share. Every loan that we provide has to meet as a fundamental, it's the first aspect actually on our credit report. It has to pass that mission fit. What is this organization doing that's aligned to the bank's goal of having a positive impact on people, society, culture, and always the environment. Well, the first step that a nursery can provide to us and make it clear is what exactly they need the funds for and how is it going to benefit the nursery. It doesn't necessarily need to be directly implemented into increasing its sustainability. We do need to see as a minimum a tangible sustainability plan that's either been put into action or will be soon, and fundamentally an aligned syllabus as well. That's very key for us, which is, again, fostering a sense of social responsibility and environmental responsibility onto the future generations. We need to see a genuine passion and motivation and commitment to sustainability and social responsibility from the shareholders and directors, not kind of what we call a paper face where the real motivation behind it is for profit. We also like to see that management teams themselves have good experience in the sector, and it's not something they've recently moved into. We need to see outstanding and good Ofsted reports really as a minimum, and ideally operations that we'll finance will be multi-sited, but that's certainly not a restriction. It's just something that's more beneficial for us. A key factor, certainly whilst it's one of the last points that I'll present, it's certainly not one of the least important, is a strong, consistent financial history. The economic environment has been extremely challenging in recent periods. So it's very important that nursery can demonstrate a good surplus margin to its borrowing covenant and ultimately navigate an uncertain interest rate environment and, frankly, wild economic challenges. Part of that is having a good cash reserve as well, because ultimately, whilst we do see organisations that once they see challenges coming, such as the energy crisis, for example, put their rates up in the following years and also look to engineer their costs further down, they can take a little bit longer to play out. So good cash reserve is there to effectively, if there are any immediate or unforeseen challenges, you have the funds there to mitigate that. Something that you mentioned previously and why we may have received a bit of a drop-off in attendance today is actually the staffing as well. We have noticed with the customers that we worked with that staffing is becoming increasingly challenging. And we like to see organisations that have good staffing policies in place, but also like to invest into their staff too. So actually staff enjoy working there and they feel as though they're developing and growing with the organisation. Some case studies of some organisations that we've actually worked with. One would be the London Years Early Foundation. That is a charitable associated enterprise that runs 40 nurseries across London, many of which are intentionally sited in disadvantaged areas of London. We provided them with a £1.5 million bond to acquire new nurseries, again in areas that wouldn't be attractive for profit nurseries. So again, delivering that early years foundation and that environmental syllabus to children that wouldn't have otherwise received it. Another customer is Barleywood Nursery, that's run by the YMC Dulverton Group. Barleywood syllabus is amazing. It sees children play and learn outside, come rain or shine in its 80-acre premises. It follows a play-based curriculum that is entirely focused on being outdoors and appreciating and respecting the environment. We supported Barleywood by providing them with the capital that it effectively needed to take its environmental impact policy to the next stage, reduce its single-use plastics to zero across all its operations, and also to purchase company electric vehicles. That's the bank and how we work with the nursery sector in a nutshell. More than happy to answer any questions.
Oh, I'm sure we've got loads there. One of which is, I know Leaf's finances are not a good surplus nor a cash reserve. So presumably there are some exceptions for businesses when that's the position.
Absolutely, so that's an ideal, of course, that we always like to see. But we've got there's two ways to string the cat, if you like. The first is going back to our corporate finance team. So they can work with organisations that are profitable, but perhaps don't necessarily have that financial consistency. That it's not to say it's a bad operation, it's just different operations have different cash flow profiles. Some suit a traditional bank loan where you're paying your servicing costs monthly or quarterly. Others need to do it in more non-symmetrical payment plans. So that's where our corporate finance can be very useful. But also as well, if we're working with an organisation that is having a great impact, but ultimately that comes at a cost of how much it can actually generate its its finances. Again, not to say it's unprofitable, but its growth in its financial reserves and profitability might be a lot more steady than a for-profit nursery, for example. We are happy to kind of roll our sleeves and work with that organisation to structure a facility that works for them, and also the covenants that don't restrict them, but again, for our safety, we can monitor that organisation and make sure that ultimately the loan isn't putting them down, because if our customers fail, then we failed. So it's kind of a case by case system in that instance, because we need to see exactly what we're working with. But by all means, provided that there's an alignment with our values and there is that environmental and social responsibility syllabus, we're happy to see what we can do. Oh, have we lost her?
We seem to have lost Cheryl. Yes. Adam?
Yes.
I while we're waiting for Cheryl to come back, I'd put a question in the chat.
There's someone who, yes, Diane has a question.
I just was wondering, a lot of nurseries are closing down because of the fact that they haven't got the money to sustain. And I just was wondering whether you were working alongside the Labour Party and or any organisations that, the Labour Party in preparation for a possible election next year, which would, because a lot of nurseries would turn around and say, we don't have the money to facilitate all these wonderful ideas that you've said. And so therefore, how do you get the small nursery or the smaller nurseries to be able to self-sustain? And I just wondered, in terms of the Labour Party, whether this was something that you could work alongside them to show how businesses can support nurseries to be sustainable without it being a profit, like because you're doing it because you want to make profit from it. You're wanting to do it for a better society. Am I getting my question across properly?
No. It's a great question, actually, and frankly, it's very challenging. Often we see these nurseries that are aligned to our mission fit. Frankly, that comes at a cost, and you see the for-profit, private equity-backed, often groups of nurseries. They dominate the market because they can offer lower costs, etc., and they are far more profitable, so they're easy to bank. We can't work with those organisations because they don't meet our minimum, frankly. So we often see organisations that are very aligned with us, but they haven't got the financial firepower there to make these ambitions come to fruition. Now, again, a good bank will not put you into a position where your facility is something that is weighing you down. It's something that is there to benefit your organisation. So it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. Whilst we don't work directly with the Labour Party, and of course, as you'd expect us to be, we have to be apolitical. We would be delighted to work with any political group that had the same agenda as us, and crucially was making better grants and subsidies to early years, to the early years sector, so that they can indeed take these steps to make themselves A, more sustainable, and B, also ideally widen their scope of potential students. So, for example, we'd like to see a lot more children in low-income families attend good, rated good and outstanding nurseries that sometimes they can't effectively pay for.
Okay, I understand about not the political. It's sort of obviously not being seen to be biased. It was just sort of trying to find out whether the Labour Party is, and the Conservative Party then, or the Liberals, going to all of them and just sort of like proposing that sort of thing is included in a manifesto, and that it's actually supported to keep nurseries open, and also to be in line with the Agenda 2030, that, because the Sustainable Development Goals, it clearly states that all assessment, all policy, all student, all curriculum must be in line with sustainability, but it obviously isn't getting through on to.
Absolutely. And we do have quite a strong presence each year at COP. And again, frankly, we lobby in the right avenues, and COP is the right
Lobby,
sort of forum.
that's the word.
to do that. Absolutely. I'm going to be very careful when I say lobbying and political parties coming from a bank. It's not something that we do. And what we have experienced a lot of, and recently, last year, I and some colleagues were fortunate to be invited to Parliament to attend an event about sustainability in banking. And frankly, it was quite disappointing, some of the things that we were hearing, not necessarily from the government, but there was lots of banks there that have now got various heads of sustainability, and we would call that greenwashing. As soon as you make an issue whereby the big banks have to include it within their prospectuses because their investors and their customers and their shareholders are conscious about it, they will throw the wallet and the technology and the people behind it to effectively say we've done that. But often the green loans and the green finance that we see from the big banks, it would never pass muster with us. It's green on the face of it. You scratch away the surface and it's not. For example, one of my colleagues recently financed a manufacturing company that produce handbags. It's a group called Kind Bag. And we all put our heads together looking at this proposal, thinking, whilst we work with retailers and manufacturers, we're always a bit skeptical. This was an organization that was turning plastic bottles into handbags, and the supply chain and the logistics had all been offset in terms of its carbon. So that is someone that's actually gone the distance to make their organization genuinely sustainable. What we see, unfortunately, a lot in the market is green, again, going back to the phrase greenwashing, where on the bare face of it, it looks like this organization is doing something green or sustainable, but actually it's not. The entire supply chain is very carbon intensive. The products themselves are not necessarily genuinely as carbon neutral as they're portrayed to be. And frankly, there's a lot of catching up to do in the financial sector of genuinely embracing these values, because unfortunately, where it is currently, a lot of the financial world sees it as something that they have to get on with, and they have to try and make it profitable. So it's corners are cut and things are never as genuine as they perhaps appear. Whereas for us, we're almost blue in the face, standing in the corner, telling the other banks that they should embrace our way of working, because quite simply, it is genuine. And the amount of customers that we say no to, that in other organisations we would be desperate to lend money to, because again, it's not a genuinely sustainable organisation, is huge. So Cheryl made a really interesting point earlier on about our bank accounts for businesses. So we actually started to move away from bank accounts for businesses simply because we have such good customer will that we actually can't lend as much money as we would like to, because so many of these organizations don't yet exist or are not at the level that we want them to be at. Oh, sorry.
No, that was me again.
Does that help?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, I seem to be the only one who's like jumping in here, but the only other thing I was thinking about, and I wasn't sure if I missed it, was whether your bank offers sustainability funds for projects that around research to demonstrate the importance of early childhood sustainability. Is that something that people could come to you for, a research project that proves sustainability in early years is important?
Absolutely. So we work with lots of think tanks, and again, this is more of a traditional loan example then, but our corporate finance team will also work with such groups. Again, it's not that kind of standard cash flow profile, but absolutely that immediately off the bat works for us in terms of emissions. So it's immediately a customer that we would want to work with. It would then be, of course, a case of is this actually, are these funds, are they repayable, frankly? Does it work for this organization to take these funds on? Which again, it depends on the specifics of the organization.
If it was for a research project, where sort of like say Cheryl's nurseries were trialing out a new sort of system or that sort of thing.
As in grants, we don't provide grants. There is a part of our organisation that do provide them. That's more centralised in our home.
Oh right, okay, Cheryl, sorry.
No, it's okay. They do grants though. I know I had quite a long conversation about Triodos about doing grants for our washable nappies project.
Right.
Which had to be scalable and so on. So that was quite an interesting conversation. We didn't actually.
And did you get it?
No, we didn't. We didn't actually progress it in the end, partly because of the interest rates we found from Triodos were much higher than what we could get from alternative funding.
That's really interesting.
But I found with people like the NatWest and NatWest RBS and HSBC, they're now claiming to be sustainable. And I was wondering, what can we do as their customers to prompt them to be more sustainable and not to do this greenwash thing? That I've got another question for you, but that was the first one. So how do we, given that some of us do have loans and do retail banking with these banks, I mean, I've managed to make ours stop giving out plastic, pens, for example, and start making, if they're going to do stuff, make it from recycled pens and that kind of, but it's kind of really minor. What would you say we should be saying to our bankers to make them show that they're sustainable?
The best way is what you're already doing, be vocal. And the customer base, businesses will always pivot to reflect what their customers want. That's why we see things such as McDonald's issuing paper straws now.
Yeah.
Why NatWest, for example, are even in the green space as it's businesses will always reflect off what their customers want, because ultimately if they don't, their customers will go to who will.
Go elsewhere.
The best way to do it is keep being vocal and keep pressing them, keep holding organizations to account, because it's easy, and it has been the case for the last 20 years. The last few years have started to change, where organizations have kind of palmed those questions and that pressure off. They can't do that anymore. And what's great about that is that the generations coming up are far more environmentally conscious. And as a consequence, that's why we're starting to see big business change. So keep doing what you're doing, keep pressing them in terms of who are they lending to? How can they tell you? For example, we were at a Green Business Awards that NatWest won. We were all sort of sitting there scratching our heads and thought, well, how can they win a Green Business Awards when they are frankly involved in so many sectors that aren't green? And that kind of culture is starting to be questioned more and more and more. That will change, but fundamentally it has to come from the customer pressure. That's the starting point.
So what questions do we ask? For example, what's Triodos's carbon footprint? I'm quite shocked you're not already net zero, because we are.
That's a great question. I should actually know it, because we just had last week our latest annual report, and it's contained in that. Net zero for a bank is difficult, and the reason why it is it's those three elements. So the first is, what are our own operations? How are they scored in terms of their carbon output?
So they net zero for you?
Well, it depends. So, for example, we have embraced in recent years a culture of working from home, the hybrid culture. So colleagues that do go into the office regularly, it's again a question, well, how are they getting there? Are they driving personal cars? Are these green cars? Are they taking public transport?
Okay, so how about scope 1 and scope 2? Are you neutral there?
Oh, forgive me, scope 1 and 2?
Scope 1 and 2 and 3, that's how you measure zero, whether you're net zero or not. It's in scopes. So scope 1 is the gas type stuff, gas boilers, and if you're buying petrol and diesel for the bank expenses. So for example, all our cars are electric, so there's no question that we'd have any kind of impact on scope 1.
So all of our premises are engineered to be as sustainable as possible.
Okay.
That helps.
I wish ours were. We've had to adapt ours, but then if you do end up with a carbon footprint, then say, I mean, ours is 6 tons a month, for example. Then we do exactly what you were talking about. We carbon offset, we use credits and so on. So why isn't the bank doing that now? Because then you could be net zero now.
We have carbon offsets, but it depends where you want to measure it. So for example, the bank's lending assets, so who are we financing? Those become part of our carbon score. So
okay, is that what scope would that be? That would be scope 3, I think.
I would suggest so, because it's not a direct. It depends on how you define direct, I suppose. But let's say, for example, we work with lots of housing associations. So lots of housing associations, we like to provide affordable access to homes for people on lower incomes. Now, lots of housing associations have quite old property stock.
Yeah, as do nurseries.
Exactly, it's how they get hold of it in the first place. But often these older housing stocks are not efficient at all, and require a lot of capital investment, capex, to bring
Yeah.
them up to standard. Now, we appreciate that these are huge outlays often for an organization in a challenging economic time. So we do a lot of financing of providing finance that they can retrofit properties. And we appreciate that that takes time. You can't just go out and, if you've got 2,000 homes in your housing association, you can't retrofit all of those within 6 months. It takes different times and at a huge cost. So it's supporting those organizations and helping them shape, and frankly putting a little bit of pressure as well on building those sustainability plans and actually putting them into action. So for us, it's about getting all of our customers to that point of net zero, or as close as they can realistically become to it. And also as well, you know, we've learned things along the way. There's customers that we have in the books now that 12 years ago we financed that we wouldn't finance now, simply because the understanding and the research of sustainability has increased so much that now we would, as going back to that fundamental point of, we need to see from a new proposal a sustainability plan, how tangible is it? They couldn't have supplied us with those at the time. So whilst we like the social impact that they're having, or the positive change that they're having on the world around them, they perhaps don't have the environmental sustainable policy that passes muster with us.
Okay. I mean, it's quite interesting. We've got Carl Jones has just joined us a little while ago from Child Base Partnerships, which you may know is one of the strongest chains, sort of quality wise, and they're employee owned. And they're, you know, very keen on sustainability, but like us, they've got some buildings that need quite a lot of work. Carl, do you want to come on, and have you got any questions you want to talk about?
No, not
Your
this,
bankers.
yeah, not at this moment in time. It's more of a just trying to catch up with where we're at with everything. See what the sustainability forum's all about, because I haven't really had much involvement, first of all. But yeah, no, it's great to be here, and yeah, hope to carry on in the future.
Carl's predecessor was very, very strong on scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions and offsetting and so on, and has been very, very, you know, helpful to the group, coming from the kind of building side of it, health and safety actually.
That's great to hear, and again, we totally appreciate that these come at a huge cost at a difficult time for businesses and for individuals. We do a lot of lending to organizations to effectively put those sustainability plans into action. So if there are any nurseries as part of your network that do want to make CapEx retrofitting, or indeed want to make some investments, we can work with them perhaps and see what we can structure for them sensibly to make those plans a reality.
So why would I come to Traidos rather than, say, Lombard Lease for my solar panels?
A great question, and again, I suppose it depends. We're not everyone's bank. We certainly don't pretend to be. Again, when this was interesting for me actually coming to the bank. So my background, I've since university, I'm a corporate banker through and through, but I basically got a bit fed up of making very wealthy people wealthy.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that, of course, but it gets quite soulless very quickly. And I wanted to work with an organization that was having a demonstrable impact, not just on the world around me, but on people. I come from Swansea in South Wales, which is a very working class part of the world. And being in London, I live in Surrey, made me want to give a lot more sort of back to, you know, where I'd come from and different communities, but also the green agenda. I've been many years ago in South America. I've seen the impact of deforestation. Unless you've seen it, and there's no real other way of describing that feeling that comes over you.
Even Swansea's polluted as hell, isn't it? I went to Swansea last year. We couldn't swim on the beach because a big sign up saying that the water quality was toxic, basically.
Well, it's interesting you said. When I was in college doing my A-levels, a lot of the classmates were from Port Talbot, which has the steelworks.
Yeah. And
this is back in 2008, 2009, and I remember the lecturer the economics lecturer talking to the students, and their PVC on their windows, their family homes, would turn pink over time after it had been installed because of the pollution.
Yeah.
And there was no kind of there was no sort of scheme to repay people or to offset give you some sort of compensation for the damage that was doing to your health directly, doesn't exist. So there are lots. It's easy in the southeast, I think, to forget lots of areas in the south is very green and leafy. The home counties are very pretty, very nice, but it's often easy to forget that a lot of the rest of the UK is kind of post-industrial. So it doesn't have the same sort of green spaces. It doesn't have the same sort. It's still got quite a lot of industry within it as well. So a lot of the pollution is still very apparent and is actually directly impacting people's health. So it's a totally different world in different parts of the country. But for me, when I met the bank, I couldn't quite believe that it was real. Again, going back to that greenwashing thing, I thought this is a clever marketing ploy. The PR is all the right optics because, frankly, people want to work with sustainable banks, sustainable businesses, etc. But it was the whole sort of interview process was very geared about my motivations, not just my technical skills. And once I got into the bank, frankly, I was blown away with how seriously we take it. And again, customers that I would have in previous banks, we would have done anything we possibly could to make these customers a customer. Were knocking on our door, wanted to work with us, and we were saying no, not because of any financial issues or anything like that. It was because they didn't meet our values. Whereas customers who are in a completely different financial shape to these proposals that do meet our values, we are bending over backwards to try and work with ourselves. So we're not everyone's bank, and we certainly don't pretend to be. We don't want to build a mass market of lending assets like, for example, some of the new banks would, like Starling or Monzo or Revolut. Their business model is for profit and to grow their share price and market share. Ours is for impact. And certainly when you work with brokers, for example, financial intermediaries, they're almost stunned when we're saying no to great prospects because they don't meet with what we do. So what I would say to any customer that would say to us, why should we work with you and not someone else? Well, it would be entirely down to the individual's motivations. Would you like to work with a genuine green bank who are doing everything that we can to make ourselves as close to net zero as we possibly can, and don't work with organizations that don't align with that goal? Or would you like to work with someone that perhaps has, and again, there's nothing wrong with this, has worked with a bank that, whilst isn't green, says it's trying to be green, as they all are, but has more useful products and services that perhaps we don't offer? And I'm very aware that running a business and meeting your philosophic and sustainable views can sometimes not quite meet in the middle.
So how can we tell? You know, the NatWest will say, oh yeah, we won this award for sustainable banking, so obviously we're fine. HSBC seem to score even higher from their own measurements. How are we meant to be able to tell when we're choosing our bankers who is sustainable and who isn't? What are the questions? So
if you look in their prospectuses and you speak to these banks, one of the things that I would often, in fact I have said this actually, to HSBC's head of sustainability. HSBC's head of sustainability posed me a question when I met him at Parliament. He said to me, a deal that they'd recently done that was a green deal, but it was for a steel manufacturer.
Right. Okay. So how have they improved their processes, I suppose?
Part of the funds that they were providing was for a green initiative for a steel manufacturer. The steel manufacturer themselves was only taking this green initiative so it could show to its customers it was doing something green. So we would immediately say that is greenwashing. And
well, I suppose it depends how they're making the steel. Are they making the steel with green energy?
No.
Oh, so how is it sustainable then if it wasn't even using green energy?
It was a project that they were looking to, I'm casting my mind back, but it was effectively about building I'm trying to remember what it was, something to do with planting trees. They were buying a patch of land that they wanted to plant trees on, but the actual impact of, in terms of a carbon balance,
yeah,
it was a scratch, but it was something that they could put on their brochures that for we plant X amount of trees a year. It doesn't actually,
planting trees doesn't do very much, does it?
It doesn't make a difference to them, but it's a great PR thing for that business. So we would call that greenwashing, whereas the other banks would say, well, that's a green loan. So if you read banks' prospectuses as well, it will cover sections about how much oil and gas customers they've got in their portfolios, how much mineral exploration they finance. These are the sort of questions that you can hold your relationship manager the equivalent of me at NatWest. The poor guy or girl will not be able to answer you probably with anything meaningful, but all that feeds back, that pressure builds, and you're starting to see that now because the banks are even starting to reflect this in their products and services. So the more that pressure grows, the more tangible and realistic different banks and big business will start to implement these plans.
Okay, so basically you're saying that if the banks are lending to unsustainable companies, then that's what makes a bank sustainable or not.
So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a few years ago, you may have seen this, recently were the figureheads for an investment group called Ethical. And everything that Ethical did was supposed to be very nice and pro sustainability, etc. But then someone did the inconvenience of actually looking into what they'd invested into, and it was filled with arms manufacturers, oil and gas companies, mineral exploration, etc. So that was a bit of a faux pas immediately for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle immediately. Ethical no longer trade, but if you want to chuckle, it's a good one to look up on a lunch break.
So Ethical aren't ethical at all?
Not at all. It was investment management companies, a basket. They'll have their safe companies and they'll have their high earning companies. When someone actually looked into, okay, well, what shares are Ethical buying into? And there was a litany of oil and gas manufacturers, arms manufacturers is the interesting one. So we have a policy, whereas all of our, there's certain sectors that we don't finance. Naturally, of course, arms and mineral exploration are off the books, and we can't also won't work with any customers that have tentacles in those industries either. So, for example, when we work with big groups, we like to see an organogram, and we question every part of that organogram. We might not be lending to that entity; it might have nothing to do with the entity that we are working with. It might just be in the same group. But if it contravenes our values, we won't work with the entity that is in front of us. And that extends as well into recently I financed a sustainable development on the Brighton coast, and that's built from reclaimed net zero materials. It was very interesting. It was a really interesting project for me to be involved in. It's working with the Ecological Society to build an ecological habitat on top of it and around it. And they are commercial landlords, so the companies that will be tenanting their premises had to, as part of their covenant with the bank, have to be a minimum mission fit neutral. So that means is that at worst, the organisations going into this, that will be tenants of this site, have to be not contravening our mission fit. But there's a lot of pressure and wording within that document. And the reason why we selected these clients, because they were aligned to us. So that all the customers going, the underlying tenants are what we would call mission fit pro. But if for whatever reason that changed, they cannot put a customer into that, a tenant into that site that contravenes our mission.
Quite challenging. I mean, I'm just thinking of the example of an electric car that's got a lithium battery, and if someone's got to mine that lithium, so how does that work?
Absolutely. So again, that is a really interesting question, and one. So we provided a lot of infrastructure. We're still doing that across the country at service stations and McDonald's and Costa Coffees, of installing car charging ports, again, to incentivize people making the switch. But again, that lithium has to come out of the ground, and lithium coming out of the ground is some of the dirtiest. It's actually an extremely dirty material itself. It can completely pollute the water source if it's put anywhere near it for decades. And also the human suffering that goes into that is extreme. We don't have a great answer for that. It's a challenging one because the lithium sources only come from certain places, and there is nothing that we are involved in financing, but this is just a general knowledge. There are lithium deposits in different parts of the world, but again, pulling that out of the ground is dirty. But it's kind of the lesser of two evils. Green cars, electric cars, they are cleaner than your normal petrol dealer combustion engines. Ultimately, if enough finance goes into the mining of lithium, you can start to affect it positively. But that's a really challenging topic as it is, and frankly, we don't have the answer there.
No, it does make it difficult, doesn't it?
There's the interesting thing about working sustainability is that it's not a finished topic. If it was finished, it'd be quite boring because it would just be the way of working. And frankly, that's our mission. We want to make it boring. We want to make it, that's just the normal practice of the world. But it's got such a long way to go. That's the challenge, and that's where that particularly motivates me and my colleagues.
So if a company's got B Corp, would you consider that to be evidence of them being sustainable?
So I've got two answers to that. One is the professional, my one. The second part is my personal one. So B Corp is a great certification. We ourselves are a B Corp, and we like to see organisations making those steps to become a B Corp. However, this is where my personal kind of concern comes in. B Corp is becoming quite a trendy badge to have on your email signature now, and wherever you start to see a lot of demand for things, a lot of financial incentives, there is the possibility that corners will be cut, and it almost becomes a pay to play. Now, provided that B Corp remain true to their values and robust in terms of their measurements, which frankly means that lots of organisations aren't going to get their B Corp status. They'll apply for it and won't get it unless they make the necessary changes. If that starts to erode, which I'm personally concerned that eventually you throw enough money at something, it might erode it. That could we see B Corp become less respectable? It's possible. I'm sure people from B Corp would fight me to the death on that, but that's just a personal concern. But yes,
I find it quite. I mean, we are B Corp, but their billing for subsequent years is enormous.
This is my concern.
We're just, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to maintain our B Corpness because of the cost just for their certification. If you have to pay £10,000 a year for the certification and they don't do anything for that, then how can you invest simultaneously in, for example, another set of solar panels? They're actually, working against us by charging so much.
I've had this conversation a few times actually, and that's kind of fostered my personal concern. It's very easy once you're making lots of money to almost turn it, rather from a genuine certification scheme, into a pay to play. Yeah. And I think we're starting to see that, as you mentioned. So the best thing to do is put the pressure back onto B Corp. What are you getting for that £10,000?
Yeah, absolutely. First year there was an awful lot of work because they had to verify every single piece of paper we produce as evidence, all our policies, procedures, our carbon footprint data, our invoices for electricity, gas, all that kind of stuff. So they did a lot of work, but year two, they don't do anything.
Well, this is it. I think there should be more of a tiered system. So when a company is going through the process of being B Corp certified, of course, it's quite an intense audit, if you like.
It is, yeah.
As part of that process, that's where it's fair to pay, because you're paying for the time, the services, just like you'd be paying your financial auditors.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. After that point, a membership fee, fair enough. If that goes towards something, again, knowing what value you get for those funds is key. But my concern is what you've just mentioned. Why are there so substantial fees in subsequent years when there isn't actually any sort of audit or any follow-on work? And my real concern is that as B Corp grows as a brand and more companies, frankly, eventually need to have it for their customers to say that almost as a badge that we're doing our bit, I'm concerned that their principles will erode. They would fight to the death on that, I'm sure. I appreciate that's not a particularly political thing to say either, but again, I hope I'm proven wrong, but that's just a personal concern.
Okay. So apart from asking our bankers about who they are putting their money into and their own carbon footprint, anything else that we can ask bankers to evidence that they're actually doing something positive in terms of
absolutely. So what you should be, so all of your bankers will give you an annual review. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, and it's a great time to meet back with our existing customers, understand if there's anything more we can do, and frankly just see what they're finding and what their ideas are. At those meetings, it's great to not only put the pressure back on your bank, but also ask for material, ask for genuine resources to show what the bank has been financing and doing to not only increase its own sustainability and carbon output, but what organizations is it working with that are genuinely having that impact? Don't be fooled, don't be kind of mouthed off, if you like, with the green loans, green finance. We financed £1 billion of green lending this year. What does that mean? So some great examples, when you actually see what those green loans go into, aren't so green at all. And in fact, it might be just a green pillar to a business that's got 7 other pillars, which are all quite carbon intensive. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors at the moment, and asking your bankers to provide you with genuine examples and resources of where they have financed genuinely sustainable organizations, or they themselves have made genuinely sustainable steps, is key.
Right, thank you for that. That's great advice. Okay, and on that,
They will squirm. They will squirm
will.
naturally. And it's not their fault. They're doing their job as best as they can. But that pressure builds and it feeds up the chain, and that's where motions start to be put into effect.
Indeed, I think, you know, as the end little people, we have to be quite pragmatic. You know, sometimes you have to go with who's available to do your, you know, banking. But it's the same with our suppliers. Some of them can provide us with data about the carbon footprint of their products, and some of them can't.
Well, you say that, but the world is built on little people. All big businesses are only big businesses because of the amount of little businesses and little customers that they have. And if all of their little customers are saying the same message, you watch how quickly those organizations will shift themselves before they lose out to competitors like us. So, for example, when I speak to my colleagues, 5 years ago, there was absolutely our competition was much lower from the high street banks than it is now. Now, in the last 2 years, since I've been with the bank, most of our competition is with the high street banks. They can never compete with us in terms of how genuine they are, or the actual genuine impact of their operations. But because they are bigger banks, that are focused more on profit and more for a mass market, whereas we aren't. We're focused on a micro market with everything that we lend to having a genuine impact, not making a massive return on equity. It limits the products and services that we can provide. Ideally, we'd have a much bigger toolbox than we do now. We are looking to increase our products and services, but of course, we need to do that in the right way, and one that doesn't compromise the service that we can also provide our customers as well. So, and this is the fun part. You know, if it was a finished article, it'd be quite boring. But because there's so much for us to work on, and in an environment that is changing and is growing so quickly, it's fascinating. It really enraptures you to wake up in the morning.
Fantastic. And certainly personal banking, it's relatively easy to have an account, you know, a savings account. I've discovered. It's just the business side is expensive. Has been our issue.
Well, for me, it's very frustrating because as a bank manager, you always like to have that baseline of your customers holding the accounts with you, because it's the scope 1 of the relationship, if you like, with loans, etc. Scope 2. But in a way, it's kind of a sign that we are genuine, because it's so easy. Because there are so many retail customers that want to have their current and saving accounts with us. The bank finds it doesn't have to really do anything to get a lot of capital invested into us. The challenge is, as a bank, is that you always want to balance that ALM, that assets versus liability. So when you save with us, that's a liability because we're liable for it to you. When we are lending, it's an asset because it's a loan that's gone something that is repayable back to us.
It's the other way around for us, isn't it?
Well, because we're genuine, it's challenging for us to do that high volume of lending that the other banks would target. So you end up almost with like a funnel where we can't take any more funds on because we need it to balance better, and it doesn't balance. But before we can, and the way of taking those more funds is by lending more money. But because there are so few organizations that are genuinely aligned to us that we can pass our mission fit test with, it bottlenecks the amount of funds that we can lend a year. But as more organizations are coming round to a more sustainable way of working and practices, that market is growing as well. So it will solve itself eventually, but in solving itself, we know that we've achieved our mission, and the world should be a much nicer place.
Lovely. Well, on that very positive note, unless anyone's got any other questions, we will call it time. I think we've had an hour on this. We normally give ourselves up to an hour and a half, but sometimes we have 2 speakers, but our other speaker is going to go on next month.
No problem. But
Gave
thank
more
you for having
time.
me. It's been a pleasure.
No, thanks very much, Adam. We must talk again.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks then. Cheers.
Thank you,
Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.